Hello, everybody, and welcome to Ruby Rogues. I'm John Epperson, and today on our panel we have Luke Stutters.
Hello.
Hello, Luke. It's just us today, and we chatted a little bit before we started recording here, and we were just talking about tooling, really, and how we use it, and maybe abuse it too. But just I guess the original thought. So I'll just start in here. Was that I have these tools, to do my development, whether it's my IDE, whether it's a gem that I'm using, whether it's the OS that I'm on. All of these things are involved in my development process. And over time, things get newer and you sometimes have to upgrade. You sometimes can delay that upgrade. Like, for example, I delayed my Monterey upgrade till yesterday for good reason. But, you sometimes delay them. You sometimes things force you to upgrade, and sometimes you're just like, you know what? I still like Carrier Wave. I'm going to keep using it even though active storage is around, or some other things, right? So we were just kind of thinking about all of these things, and we just thought there was some stuff here that we could rip out. So I guess let's just dive in with maybe philosophy on this. So Luke, if you were to
I'm an active dinosaur. I actively try to stay on the oldest, most established technologies I possibly can. I enjoy ignoring new versions by hard-working open source authors. I take a delight in getting maybe 5-10 versions behind. No, I'm only joking. Everyone loves a fresh version. But what I don't like, John, is I don't like tool churn. I can't stand having to relearn something when I've already had a tool that does a great job of it.
Hey folks, this is Charles Max Wood from Top End Devs, and lately I've been working on actually building out Top End Devs. If you're interested, you can go to topenddevs.com/podcast, and you can actually hear a little bit more about my story about why I'm doing what I'm doing with Top End Devs, why I changed it from devchat.tv to Top End Devs. But what I really want to get into is that I have decided that I'm going to build the platform that I always wished I had with devchat.tv, and I renamed it to Top End Devs because I want to give you the resources that are going to help you to build the career that you want, right? So whether you want to be an influencer in tech, whether you want to go and just max out your salary and then go live a lifestyle with your family, your friends, or just traveling the world or whatever, I want to give you the resources that are going to help you do that. We're going to have career and leadership resources in there, and we're going to be giving you content on a regular basis to help you level up and max out your career. So go check it out at topenddevs.com. If you sign up before my birthday, that's December 14th. If you sign up before my birthday, you can get 50% off the lifetime of your subscription. Once again, that's topenddevs.com.
Well, okay. So maybe we should do this style. I'll ask the questions after you answer them. You just leapt in before I even began asking the question. But yeah, I was basically going to ask you how you saw yourself. All right, fair enough.
I do. I take a genuine delight in using the simplest, oldest tech.
Yes.
And firstly, if you already know it, you're always going to be faster doing something you already know, right? And my philosophy, especially when it comes to Ruby and Rails coding, is to use something which everyone knows, right? So at all costs, avoid upgrading to the latest magic stuff unless you absolutely have to. And single page apps would be the main offender. Everyone was on the single page apps a few years ago. Now there's loads of single page apps out there. And oh, how the mighty have fallen. And good old yours truly sitting there reacting badly to React has finally been proven right. And everyone's going over to using Turbo and Stimulus. It's fantastic.
Are you using Turbo and Stimulus?
Do you know I am? I am using.
Oh, okay.
Stimulus. So I was. I did a little Sinatra demo. So I had Turbo in production before Rails 7 was officially released. But that's because I wrote my own Turbo backend onto a Sinatra app because I needed a real-time updates front end for a manufacturing process. And I was like, well, I'm going to have to write my own from scratch, for this fairly embedded environment. And then I kind of found some PHP code that re-implemented Hotwire and said, I could just write my own backend. And it's 10 lines of code. Away we go. So, yeah, I am.
Nice.
But I'm also running various single-page apps and I know which one I prefer to work on, and it's the one that doesn't involve a Webpack compiler.
I mean,
but that's out of scope, really. What we're really talking about here is tools. We're talking about tools. We're talking about small things. A tool is the small thing, right? It's not a framework or a philosophy.
It could be.
A tool is something you run to I don't know, find errors, static code checking, this kind of thing. That's a tool.
I mean,
right?
It can be. I mean, so for me, right? Okay, so back when Backbone basically convinced us all that JavaScript actually could be better than it was at the time, right? Then we were like, oh, this is very cool. I like what it's doing. I like that maybe my life is going to be easier. And then right in there was roughly when, the whole Angular, Ember, and then React was like just right behind them or whatever. And there was like a lot of promise at that time that the amount of JavaScript that we were going to be writing was going to be less. And these were tools. These are tools, right? And I mean, I felt that way. But I think when it came down to it, like I never really felt like React delivered on the promise, which is what I think that you're basically saying here. And but there wasn't really a good alternative, right? Like you either were stuck with React, which didn't deliver on the thing that it said, but it did do some things that were really powerful and cool, or you were like, well, I'm going to keep trying these other things, but you still were back in the land that you were before React, so you had other problems going on. And yeah, you just had to pick a poison.
Lots of hand code.
Yeah, you had to pick a poison. I think one of the phenomenal things that, like, in my opinion, has come out in recent years is the rise of like the Stimulus Alpine kind of thing, where I mean, there's a using the analogy, since a lot of us are in the Rails community,
Alpine?
they're sharp knives. It's a similar paradigm to Stimulus, right?
Sure.
Yep. I guess there's a few libraries out there that are doing similar-ish type things, right? Leave your state itself in the DOM. Handle like partial page reloads very gracefully and all that kind of stuff, right? One of the issues with React and Vue and basically most of these other JavaScript frameworks is they require so much control over your entire page that anything that's outside of its control has the potential to break everything. Either the other thing, the thing that isn't React, or React itself. And you have to deal with that conflict, basically. One of the powerful things about Stimulus, and now Hotwire, which basically includes Stimulus, to be clear, is the fact that it is such a sharp knife and that it's compatible with everything because it's literally good at the one thing that it's good at, right? So stealing DHH's sort of philosophical words here. But yeah, I think that's what makes it feel good, right? I mean, as a person that like operates on gut and feel a lot, like I use the words feel all the time. So I'm just like, this thing doesn't feel good, doesn't smell right. And that's how I like judge stuff. And then I have to like spend a lot of time thinking about what it is that made me think that it was that way, right? So I have to
and I will
figure that stuff out after.
If you're anything like me, you always come up with the reason later.
Yeah.
So I mean, like 99.9% of the time, I'm like, I don't like that, but I can't put in words why I don't want to use this technology. And then, like 8 months later, something's blown up, and you're like, that's why.
Well, I mean, I would say that, like, okay. I mean, yes, but I would definitely say that, like, if 8 months later something's happening and you're saying that's why, it could just be that you are attributing this problem and crediting yourself with foretelling it before it happened. But what I mean is, like, a lot of times I mean, your gut is just your subconscious telling you that something's wrong here, right? And sometimes it just takes you a little while to figure out what it is in your subconscious. And that's really what I mean. So sometimes it takes me a while to put it into words. But yeah, either way, point is, I always was very frustrated by React. I definitely felt like it didn't deliver on the promise, but it like had value. And so it was like really hard to balance those two things, right? When there really wasn't an alternative that we could buy. Now there is Stimulus. It's very cheap and it feels very awesome. So it was easy for me to swap tools once I encountered it. I mean, I literally looked at the Hello World controller example and my eyes just like popped out of my skull. I was like, holy shit, this is amazing. And then I used it and it was exactly as amazing as I thought it would be. And it felt good. It felt good to be right as well. But the tool felt good. So so some tools feel like that because they are like very sharp knives, right? I've kept Rails in my toolbox because it's a really good tool. It's a very good generic tool, but doesn't handle mobile apps very well, for example, right? There's lots of things that it isn't designed for that it isn't going to do.
Not yet.
And you're going to have to use other things.
Not yet. Have you had an eye on the Hotwired course? Oh man, what's it called? It's probably in the edit here while I was up. Strada. The Strada.
Okay. Nope. So for me,
so this is according to Hotwired, it's all about making mobile apps using Rails. Have you tried out Hey, as in DHH's email thing?
No.
You need to try that out because that is like looking into the future of Ruby Rails mobile development.
So okay, are you ready to hear my thoughts here? This gets into like my thing with tools. So I'm one of those people who, if given the opportunity, would literally come into work every day and spend 8 hours a day fixing up my tools and making them better. And because it's interesting and fascinating to me, and I would just be completely I'd just be off on every tangent fixing my tools every day and I would never get anything done. But because that is sort of my natural inclination, I've worked very hard to like put rules around what I do. And unfortunately, in a lot of ways, that like kind of causes me to swing the exact opposite way. Like this is why I'm so late to install Monterey, right? I was like, I'm going to wait on Monterey because I want to wait like 3 months for everyone else to like solve the problems because I've got work to do today. I don't have time to like be down for half of a day or a whole day figuring out some weird thing again that just always happens every time you upgrade Mac. So
you were right.
I mean, but here's the thing. It's been way longer than 3 months and I just didn't get around to it, right? Like, and so like my reaction to my own sort of like natural inclination is to sort of like swing way too hard. And so a lot of times, like, there are cool tools that I'm like vaguely interested in that I'm just like, nope, got to stay away. And like, so that's like my self-control like kicking in. And then like, I just don't touch a lot of things. And then I wake up, I don't know, from my stupor, I guess, a while later. And I'm like, wow, I haven't upgraded anything on my machine in forever. Now I'm having problems because I haven't upgraded to Monterey. And I was like trying to do something with a mobile app and I'm having trouble because Xcode, whatever, it can't connect to my test phone for some reason and like whatever, so now I have to. So yeah, I mean, everyone's a little bit different. Mine tends to, like I said, I tend to like overreact in that way. And so maybe I'm in the dinosaur category because of my overreaction there. But as soon as I find a tool,
I cringe.
I throw the old one out. Go ahead.
I cringe as soon as I open the DevTools in Chrome and it says there's an update to DevTools in Chrome. And it was like DevTools Chrome. Was it the update 100, update 1000 the other day? Did you see it? In the Chrome DevTools, it opened up and had a little party thing. So, hooray, it's 1,000th update to Chrome DevTools. I was like, oh no, please, no.
I think I'm on 100.
Please don't update my DevTools.
I mean, I remember Chrome giving me some party thing about something, but I don't remember what it was. I think it was in like Gmail or something.
It's DevTools 100, not DevTools 1000, because what it means is they've just moved the buttons around. So all that to me means
you got to learn it again.
Now you have to look somewhere else. You have to learn where to click again.
I mean,
so that, I don't know. I don't like learning new things. I don't like meeting new people. I don't like any of that. I just want me and my computer doing the same thing we've always done.
Got it. Oh, you know what? Yeah, I do have a what's new thing down there. I just ignored it, It's in that little console tab, that pops up on everything that's not the console. And I immediately say, what the heck? Get rid of that because you're blocking my view. I don't even look at it ever.
Oh, well, I get lost. I spent like 20 minutes looking for breakpoints on one unfortunate occasion when the client was in the room and they were like, you don't even know how to work Chrome. Oh, no, it's just changed. It's not me.
Oh, that's rough, dude. Okay, so this is definitely off topic, but I also sometimes struggle when I'm like doing a demo, and it's whatever. Like live code, this is why we say live coding sucks. Like anytime you're doing like a demo and something weird that's completely out of your control happens, geez, it's so frustrating. Especially if you're like demoing something that is like basically like MVP or otherwise, you just stitched it together anyway because it's not polished. If something is no longer under your control, stuff gets weird. Yes. So anyway, back on topic things. So what happens when so tooling. So you get a new tool, right? I think that Stimulus is amazing. In fact, I thought the Stimulus was amazing pretty much almost from day one. And I literally had to just keep stopping myself on every project from literally ripping all the JavaScript out and replacing it with Stimulus because it just made me that happy.
It's a good move. It is a good idea to refresh JavaScript.
I have not done so.
I'm doing something now. So I'm rewriting a Vue, quite a sophisticated Vue.js-based complex page. It's not a single page app, but it's a big page, right? So it's the config page. So it's like the biggest.
Oh yeah, your big Vue app. Yeah.
And I'm rewriting that
I call Vue
in Turbo and Stimulus. And at one level, that's a really bad and pointless waste of time, right? Because it works. Why mess with it? But on the positive, as I've got this new tool and I've looked through this problem, I've realized I made a fundamental mistake with like the actual structuring of the data in the application. And because I made that mistake, there's fundamental things I cannot do in this app because I haven't abstracted one thing from the other. I need an extra table. I need an extra model in there to distance things. So I think that's enormously valuable for a product to realize that stuff early on. So yeah, you're sitting there. I know you're sitting there, John, because you do a lot of client work like I do. And you think, oh man, this isn't adding any value at all. But if you have that fundamental realization while you're redoing your app, while you're redoing your models, that that all needs to change, I'd say that is a valuable thing. And the way I think of it is, you never take the floor up in your house, do you? You never take the floorboards up and have a look under your house. That's an awful thing to do. But if you do that, and you find a leaky pipe, you might have just saved your house.
Yes, this is true. I'm like imagining Luke. I mean, I don't. You're just.
I'm doing that for real.
You're just like pulling up your floorboards one weekend, and whoever you are, your housemate, your friends, your spouse comes home and they're like, what are you doing? You're just like, oh, I just thought I would pull up the floorboards and see if there was a leaky pipe. I mean, yes, no one's going to roll with that. But if you have control, you can do that. That's true. This is fair. I don't know what to say. I don't think that is a mode that I could get into. That's for sure. I certainly would not be able to justify it to my fellow developers on a project. Yeah. And I have also definitely been guilty of being quite irritated at a fellow developer on a project who was just doing that. Also, at the same time, I have to give that person credit because I think that person. So I have this particular individual in mind that I'm thinking about that I used to work with a long time ago, and yes, I was often very irritated by the things that they would do because I felt like it added more work to my plate because I would have to fix some sort of bug that they caused, by doing this, without telling anyone, caused problems in my life. But at the same time, that individual was also learning new things all the time. I had a lot of familiarity with new tools. I would say that they had shallow familiarity, but they did. They explored a lot of things. And obviously, I think personally that there is a balance that you can have in this. You can check out new tools without irritating your fellow developers all the time. But I would, I recognize that there's sort of a different space that you can be in.
If you're a junior developer, there's enormous value in doing the latest, greatest stuff because if it's really new and fresh, no one else is going to be significantly better at it than you are. So this can be a really, really big step up in your career to kind of aggressively pursue the latest, shiniest thing, because then you can get a kind of better paid role doing that latest, shiniest thing. And against other candidates, you're going to stack up much better than you would. You're not going to come in against someone with like 15 years Kubernetes experience because it hasn't been out for 15 years. So this is like a really good move as junior dev. However, if you're in a more senior position in the company or you're working in consultancy and you're responsible for delivering real functional features, this is a total nightmare because very little of this stuff is really going to add value to your product. It's just new, shiny, interesting stuff.
Yeah, so first of all, it's really, I think that doesn't, so the underlying problem here is that new shiny stuff is not obviously more valuable than the old stuff. It takes effort, time, and some serious investigation and judgment and like a whole bunch of stuff to decide that, you know what? So for example, you'll love this one, Luke. I've talked with a number of people around the local Charlotte area in the course of being involved with Charlotte Doves that are in that CIO, CTO role. And there's a lot of JavaScript going on in Charlotte. There's a lot of React going on in Charlotte. And there's a lot of projects that existed that have been rewritten in the past few years in these front end frameworks. And I literally have gone to lunch with like about 10 CIO, CTOs at this point, and I've heard 6 of them say, oh yeah, we've had projects that we're rewriting in JavaScript, and we're not done with them. It took a year to write them in the first place. We've been writing them in JavaScript for 2 or 3 years now, and they don't have feature parity with the original thing, and we don't expect to have feature parity in the next 2 or 3 years. And we also have 10 times as many developers as we did when these things were written and other things. It's crazy, like, because one of the reasons why I think Stimulus is taking off is because people are like, shit, no matter what people say about React, it's not working. And look, that's anecdotal, but I figured you would love it anyway.
It's anecdotal, but it's also 100% true.
I do believe that it's true. I wouldn't be saying it if I thought that they were lying to me or if I thought that their opinions were skewed by it in some way. I think that they're looking at it from the role of, I'm paying, they're in charge. They're responsible to the company for the cost of these projects. They're responsible for the timelines of these projects and responsible for whether these projects are delivering or not. And they're looking at it from that high level view. And they're saying it's costing us more. It's taking longer and it's not even actually succeeding. Like, this is a problem. And they feel like there's no way out of it. And yeah, I mean,
well, opportunity.
I think there is, but that's just me.
It's not a problem. It's an opportunity. Speaking of trials and tribulations of the wider development community, did you see the Hacker News discussion on Rails where someone linked to a survey that said the Rails developers were the number 2 slot, second most in-demand developers in the world, Ruby and Rails developers. Would you like to guess which number 1 slot went to? Which language, which community is in the most demand?
I have 3 guesses. My first guess is Go, my second is Rust, and my third it would be JavaScript. Or I should let me kick JavaScript out, put Python there. That's the right one.
You could have been right with Go. It's Go. Go topped that chart.
Nice.
Have you written any Go?
I have written a little bit, and I've never dived in fully.
I used it as a Kubernetes, a Docker multi-architecture test. So I had a Go program, compiled it to x86, and called it ARM. Just used that as a really simple test to make sure the right kind of binary is coming down. Of course, because it's all a self-contained binary,
and
that works really well.
Okay, so
but I have and I use MinIO, which is I can't recommend more. MinIO is an amazing project. That's also written in Go, and it's like literally one file. You kind of copy it to the server, and away it goes. So yeah, I've been the beneficiary of Go. But I've never given.
I mean, if you're using Docker, you're the beneficiary of Go. But and if you've done like any filtering or some of the other more complex Docker commands, you're touching it right there.
It's Docker written in Go.
Yes, so a lot of the tooling around it is. I don't know if Docker Engine or anything is written in Go.
I thought Docker Compose was a Python script.
There is some Python going on. So, but like all those Docker commands, right, are using Go underneath.
Do you know what, John? That is a great example of a new shiny tool. Was when Docker came in. That's a fantastic example.
Okay, let's talk about Docker. I was actually talking with somebody about this the other day, and I think that the Ruby community is burnt out on Docker, and for good reason. I still believe that Docker is amazing and everyone should be using it. It's my belief that the problem is that the patterns that got pushed on the Ruby community as this is how you should do stuff, it was bad. And because they were bad, people were like, well, my experience is terrible. This stuff doesn't work. My stuff is slow, and like all these problems, right? It's just hard. And you're asking people, really fundamentally at the end of the day, I think that this is why I wrote Shiplane and all this kind of stuff. I believe that there's nothing wrong with a developer that literally doesn't know how to use their own computer, but as soon as you plop them in the IDE, they can perform and churn out code. I think that's fine. Obviously, I don't understand it as a, like I don't understand how you can not know how to use your computer. But if you can if you can do the job without understanding, then who cares? At the end of the day, the patterns that were pushed on the Ruby community for Docker required too much expertise in Docker, and most people to actually use. And most people in the Ruby community were not interested in learning Docker. They weren't really interested in DevOps personally as a whole, and so they weren't going to learn that stuff. And so they had a bad experience using it. And the people that were interested in learning Docker were using these patterns that also had bad performance problems and all sorts of things, right? And so people just kind of tired of all the stuff, and then everyone's like, oh, you can solve this by using Kubernetes, which is a lie. But now everyone's right. Like, wow, okay, I literally have to swallow the whole ocean to get my stuff to work. Like, this is a problem. And so to me, this is the real issue, and why Docker's so painful for the Ruby community is it was just sold wrong. But I think that's fine, because if you think about the whole hype curve thing, right? Docker was seriously hyped up. Yep. I think that now that the hype has been deflated, now the real work can happen, and we'll be back on Docker in a few years. I think once people understand the value better and better patterns are pushed. That's my opinion on Docker.
I've kind of got the hang of it now. I still wouldn't reach for it. I have to use it in the day-to-day, but I've not yet had that experience of Docker where it solved a problem for me. And I think the thing about tools and new tools, if it solves a problem that you have, you're going to jump on that tool, you're going to love it, you're going to promote it. But if a tool doesn't solve a problem if you don't have that problem of kind of conflicting, difficult environments or conflicting processes, you're not going to want to use that tool.
I mean, this is exactly what happened, right? So when you have these bad patterns, then people have to find workarounds, right, to solve the new problems that they have. And then they wake up one day and they're like, that's weird. I thought that I was cleaning that one room in my house, and all I ended up doing was moving my laundry into another room, and now that room's dirty, right? And so this.
That's how I feel about that.
Okay, it's the same. Look, it's the same thing as when people are like, "Oh, functional programming is so much better." I'm like, I love being a Rubyist and being able to do OOP and functional programming whenever I feel like it. I'm sorry that your language doesn't give you this, but yeah, I mean, I think the functional programming is great when it's good. I think that it's terrible when it's bad, right? Like every tool out there, whatever. As soon as people jump all over something and hype too much about it, I'm like, something is scary about this thing. I should watch from the sidelines and see if it's good or not. But I really felt like Docker was a paradigm changer. So as somebody, and the reason why I thought that is because I came from a place where I got into DevOps a long time ago. I was doing it when basically it was just sysadmin stuff, right? And we didn't have a sysadmin at the company that I was at, so somebody had to learn it. I did. Very cool. I wrote lots of scripts to handle installing new machines when we needed them. I want to say...
Did you write Perl scripts?
No, I mean, I wrote bash scripts or whatever because we were installing stuff on Ubuntu. But, EC2 came out and it was awesome, right? It was way better than, the VMs that we had before that. Obviously EC2 has gotten a lot harder to use or whatever, and now we have other competitors and all that kind of stuff. But it was really awesome when it came out. Very cool. Wrote some scripts to install things. It was just cool that I could easily get a new VM. I didn't have to spend half of a day basically ordering a new VM or whatever before I could finally start installing it. Okay, that was better. Then we came out with I guess Puppet actually existed, but then Chef Puppet became a little bit more popular, and that made my life easier. except that every time you try to update a server, there's a lot of interesting quirks that go on. And updating a server is the hardest thing, because if you think about it if you're a developer, but you're the sysadmin on your team, you really only touch your servers when they have problems. So the last time you updated was 6 months ago. My job isn't to be a daily sysadmin, so I'm not gonna keep my chef scripts or my chef recipes like up to date on a daily basis, right? I'm just gonna keep them locked in. 6 months later, I then go try and like fix my server, and boom, stuff breaks because there's version conflicts now, or Ubuntu archived, because I'm running on like an out of date version of Ubuntu now, right? So it archives, if you go too far back in time, it like archives some of the repositories or whatever. So that means the URL changes.
The file.
Yep. So stuff breaks, and those errors don't bubble up very well, and it can take you a long time to figure this stuff out. But you did it.
Dare I ask which version of Ubuntu?
Currently, I think most of my stuff's on
which the oldest one.
I'm not sure that I could answer that question. I'd have to actually look at this. I know which project has my oldest version of Ubuntu. It's actually probably not Ubuntu. It's actually probably Debian. It might be Debian Jessie or the version before, but I'm not sure which one. But either way, whatever. If I can get it working, I'm probably not going to update it. Like, just it kind of depends, right? But I'm only
depends how complex that
and like the security needs of it, for example, and like what it's doing, right? So there's a lot of reasons why your chef scripts might not be in a good place, or your puppets, like all that stuff. Ansible has the same problem. Doesn't matter. They all solve the same problem in a very similar way. So anyway, these things have certain specific problems that crop up due to how a developer that's acting in the DevOps space is using it versus how a sysadmin that's doing it every day might use it. And I feel like these tools have shifted towards being better tools for sysadmins than they are for developers. And discovered Docker. And while it kind of sucked to use for a long time, when Docker for Desktop came out, like it suddenly became really easy to get working for people. And that made it easily accessible, because you can go install Docker for Desktop.
I never tried it before. Docker.
It was messy.
Was it like before Docker?
So you would have to install the VM thing. So you're on, let's take Mac or Windows, because they're going to be similar-ish experiences. You'd have to have Docker installed in a VM. You'd have to have Docker Machine installed if you're on Mac. If you're on Windows, you would have to have a separate interface, and you would have to be using WSL. Actually, I take that back, because pre-WSL, it just was very messy on Windows, and I don't remember all the steps. I do remember that I had to do some quirky stuff. WSL came out, made it easier. Docker for Desktop came out, made it even easier. And in Mac world, Docker for Desktop came out, and you could get rid of Docker and Docker Machine, and now stuff would like work. Docker was just basically running at a VM for you. Now Docker for Desktop wraps it all in a machine. Fantastic. It's always worked great on Linux, because you just installed Docker. The problem, I take it back, you did still need Docker Machine on Linux as well. Now you do not, which is phenomenal. But yeah, I mean, now it's pretty easy to work. You don't have to know that you need these 5 libraries to install them all, get them all configured together, and go. Now you just install a freaking program and it works, right? You now have it available to you on the command line. Boom, you can go.
Yep.
That made it accessible to people that weren't going to spend all day long in a tutorial for a tool that they didn't understand in the first place, trying to figure out like why their machine wasn't working because they're looking at a tutorial from 4 months ago before Apple updated something, or they have a different stuff installed from Brew, or their SSL library is out of date or something, right? All of these things like make it difficult for people to access a new tool. So packaging up a tool, configuring it, making it out of the box available to things, suddenly makes it accessible to people. And that's what happened to Docker. And that's when it's like, suddenly that's when it had the popularity jump or whatever. But yeah.
How much luck have you had convincing your colleagues to use the new amazing tool that
For teams that I'm on, not too much. For trying to convince my colleagues who are on their own teams, but don't have somebody on their team that, like loves Docker and is like, knee deep in it every day, that's way harder, because they have to become that person, and many people are not ready to become that person, and I think that right now, today, you kind of have to have Docker knowledge on your team to make use of it. I think there's still a little bit more tooling that has to be made to make it invisible to people.
Hey, folks, I'm here with JD from Raygun. JD, we were talking just a second ago about empathy, and it seems like a common concept within the programming community. And yet, when we're building features for customers, a lot of times we call it done when it passes CI, deploys, and doesn't give us errors. And that really doesn't seem very empathetic when it comes to our customers because we're not looking at what they're doing. Do you have thoughts on this?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, at the end of the day, until your code actually hits the customer, you don't really know if it's any good. Everybody uses things in so many different weird and wonderful ways. You can only really debug in production.
I've been there. It's done.
Here.
It's not done. Oh, crap. It's not done. I got to go fix it. Now it's done.
Yeah, absolutely. And when we see things like error reports flowing into Raygun,
right.
A lot of the time it's things where you just kind of go, oh, that was a configuration that as a developer, I didn't think could exist, but actually here's an example. And so it's connecting that code to customer and your development team through to real users and their experiences, which to your point, builds real empathy, and the best software teams care a lot about how their customers are experiencing their software.
Right. It's kind of the feedback from the app, but it's also kind of this meta feedback. As we do better, we tend to get less of this negative input back from our customer, which really does reflect empathy.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also think, to your point earlier about CI/CD pipelines, like we've done an amazing amount of work as an industry to automate getting to prod really fast. But if you really want to go super fast, you need to close that loop with real-time feedback from prod back to the dev team. And that allows them to do things like fail forward and just really leverage that investment in CI/CD, and it can turn into a real superpower.
Yep, absolutely. So I'm going to encourage you folks, set up your CI/CD, but then go sign up for Raygun. They'll actually give you a free trial, and you can get it at raygun.com.
My challenge is that although I'm a self-described tool dinosaur and I love old tools, there sometimes is. Sometimes I find a new old tool, right? Sometimes I find something from the past,
Sure,
which is amazing. And I'm like, look, we could use this. This is going to solve all our problems. And it's like 5 years old, so it's definitely going to work.
That doesn't seem that old.
And taking people with you on that journey is incredibly difficult.
Yep.
Persuading people that they don't need the thing that they've just spent 2 years mastering really is a challenge. And even if it is going to be better for the product, better for the business, it's going to save a lot of time, people don't like having their tools taken away. That's a very difficult conversation. Have you ever taken anyone's tool away, John?
I watched other people take people's tools away, and I watched how poorly they reacted to it. So I don't do that. I actually worked really hard to give people consensus or to get consensus from people that we're going to do this thing. And so I often, I'm not the person that I don't believe in the whole, do first, apologize later. I typically actually try to get permission or whatever. And I do that through trying to get consensus around people, or get consensus from all the people on a team. And that can end up blocking things that I want to do.
It's a great way. It's a great way to lose all your senior developers. I was involved in a company that lost every single one of its senior developers because of a kind of engineering management level decision. And they just all quit. They changed the front end, and literally everyone left. It was almost glorious to behold the dominoes falling. So what you're saying is very important. If you want to maintain a good team, you can't push a tool into someone's hands. You just can't do it in tech. You have to persuade.
Well, you can. There's just a cost.
This is going to give them value. It has to. Well, I'm saying it has to be persuasion. You can't mandate. You can't make people change the way they work. This is an incredibly unsuccessful way of managing a software development team. Of course, this is something I have done. So I have been managing software teams and, been this kind of Stalin-esque figure, central planning, like a Putin-esque fist crushing a development team by making them change the whole way they work. I have done that for real. But in my defense, John, the things I was doing were quite innocuous. I introduced Git for source control.
I mean, as also being part of the Git cult myself, I certainly have no problems with you doing this.
but it massively upset
I believe it.
people. Didn't like it. They still don't like it, right? So that was one thing. The other thing I introduced was I can't remember if it's Datadog. It's probably Datadog, but client-side error monitoring. So I said we've got to start monitoring JavaScript errors on the client, not just server-side stuff, because it's an e-commerce site. We want to know our page break. The quality assurance team went mad over that.
Really?
There was a total because,
You added a lot to their workload?
if you got like if you got a zero defect policy, but that zero defect policy only applies to the server you're running your software on, no problem. If your zero defect policy is suddenly extended to anyone who happens to connect to your website with any mobile device,
Got it.
Suddenly these people live in an entirely different universe.
So what you're saying is you gave them a new tool which actually conflicted with the policy that they had or whatever. Yeah, it's fair.
It caused the most amazing structural problems. It kind of broke the ethos of the company. And I regret it. I genuinely regret introducing that level of error.
You regret it?
Because it was just such a bad
I mean, maybe you introduced
do.
it in a bad way, but surely their products got
Before
better.
They had no idea. They had no idea what an awful world mobile browsers were.
Oh man, surely the product got better though.
Oh, it was like taking a group of children through the Willy Wonka tunnel.
All right, fair enough. So
They were horrified and upset by it.
I have some questions for you, Luke, and I suppose I'll have to answer them too. But so we've been talking about how we, kind of go about like getting new tools or something. So I'm interested. I feel like we should probably answer like two questions. One, are there some really cool new tools that like we're like, these are I'm trying these out. I love these new tools. These are the sharp knives that I've added to my bag. Are there some tools that you're like, these really suck and I really wish there were some replacements for them?
Man, that's a tough question. So for front-end stuff, my new tool is Roda. I've been trying to build a product in Roda. I haven't got there yet. I've got stuff in production, but it's not a product. But I really like the Roda infrastructure, and that's my new kind of passion. I'm finding it incredibly difficult to get to grips with, especially coming out of a Rails routing model or a Sinatra routing model. There are you have to totally change gears. And so that's my new exciting tool, but it's not, I can't recommend it yet. It's almost like there's a book called Mastering Roda. It's almost like I need another book. I'm not volunteering to write this book, but I know exactly what would be in this book. And it would be a series of reference projects. Like, here's how you write a blog in this system. Here's how you write a notes-based app. Yeah. One of these cookbooks doesn't exist, and I find it frustrating. In terms of what else, so I do a lot of database work. I started using is it PG Monitor, one of these database level monitors. Something I never really looked at before, and it's part of shifting out of the Rails stack into something else. Now I no longer trust my database queries, so I've started really looking at database query performance in a way I hadn't before. And I want something that does graphs. I don't just want to see a number and a SQL statement. Now I want to see average times. I want to see average load times. I want to see the bad queries. I want to see the quick ones too, and the voluminous ones. And Postgres dashboards or MariaDB dashboards, something I've never gone into before, but now I want that. As soon as I do a new project, I want to see a database dashboard.
You
to have a look at those.
That you can spend a lot of money and get that, right? You can spend a lot of money and get it from something like New Relic or Scout.
Datadog.
Datadog does that too. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, Datadog or Honey Badger. Yeah, all this stuff. Now I want that. Now I want that straight away, and I want it in my dev environment. So I want to see those graphs. I want to see how long this stuff takes, because you otherwise you miss the N+1 queries, and that drives me crazy.
If you're looking for N+1 queries, Bullet will help you find them.
Very
it's free.
True. Very true. In terms of like just day-to-day dev, I'm kind of in and out of VS Code. I'm in and out of VS Code, and that's like after 20 years of Vim, I'm nearly all the way there. That's probably the biggest tool change, especially for Ruby add-ons, like the kind of solar graph for Ruby. I've actually got completion now. I've never had autocomplete as a Ruby developer, ever. I had a look at RubyMine, never really spent any time on it. To get autocomplete using my own classes in Ruby has been pretty transformative.
So you're saying that you like it? You like getting the autocomplete?
Yeah, my philosophy is I don't really want an IDE because in my own projects, because if I need the IDE to autocomplete, and I haven't structured the project in a memorable way, so I need to go back and refactor. But I'm increasingly doing work on not just brownfield projects, but this field, John, is incredibly brown. This is a very much developed field. In that, rather than being brown, there's kind of rubble and concrete everywhere. So in those situations, a fully featured IDE really helps you out. So if you're fighting for survival in an enormous code base, that's when I've really kind of got value from VS Code.
As someone who has also been a text editor user, basically, for pretty much my whole career as well, I did use IDEs for the first couple of years, and I graduated out of that once I realized that they were getting in my way. I am hearing, when I talk to people about the problems that I had with IDEs, I am hearing from people that basically those problems seem to have gone away. So it's possible that I probably try once a year to do RubyMine or to do VS Code or something, right? I haven't really taken a permanent plunge, but like the things like not trusting my IDE to handle environment stuff very well, right? Comes from the fact that basically if the IDE has an update, or if your OS has an update, right, and then now suddenly your IDE can't connect to the environment, or if the environment that your IDE is using is separate from the command line environment, you can have various issues. And since I use Docker for literally everything, making sure that my IDE, has access to and would be using the appropriate Docker environment is very important. There does seem to be work in this arena, but I have to be kind of convinced that that's, I don't want to, for me, that's so costly to lose a whole day trying to get environment fixed when it's broken, that once again, these kinds of problems don't happen normally. They happen on a day when, production's down because there's a production bug. Oh no, my environment's down on my machine at the same time, and I'm literally stuck for 4 hours just getting the environment working. Can't even work on this production bug. Mm-hmm. That's the kind of situation that I really hate, and that's what I'm always trying to avoid.
I tell you the tool which I'm crying out for at the moment, and this is so dumb, you'll laugh at me, but I have found it, and it must exist. What I want is a tool that looks at log files, maybe loads of them, maybe just one, and it looks for Ruby backtraces. So if it sees something in that file that looks like a Ruby backtrace, it sends me a notification, an email, whatever. That's what I want. You would have thought it would just be a regex and 10 lines of code, but I can't find it.
So you just need to install error monitoring software and intercept those backtraces before it happens?
There's a couple of reasons why I don't want to do that. Firstly, some of these programs I cannot change. So some of these log files I don't have control over the program, but I have access to the log file, so I can't change it. And that would be an excellent solution. And the second thing is, I don't want it to do that. That's not how I want it to work. I want it to look at the log file because that's what I do. And I want the computer to do what I do in the way I do it, but do it for me instead of me having to do it myself.
That's fair. Rather, so we're not on Stack Overflow, so I won't tell you that you're wrong, as seems to be the new way of dealing with hard problems now over there.
Oh man.
Yeah, people are getting ruder.
I deleted one of my answers on Stack Overflow because one of the editors came along and rewrote my answer. And I said, that's not what I wrote. You can't just rewrite what I wrote. That's not how the internet works.
I mean, it is, but and that's part of the problem. But yes, no. So, I got you. I'm not going to write it. I feel like there's probably a way to write something to do that. But yeah, I'm sure that
I know it's a regex, and that's it. That's all there is.
AI would probably be a really good solution for that. But it's probably also like a waste of effort. Yeah.
That's another thing I'm looking for in Ruby is like a decent OpenCV set of bindings. That is a bit of a lack in the Ruby ecosystem in terms of tools. I can't drop into OpenCV easily with Ruby. Suppose I want to read something, right, that spies on my neighbors using number plates. So suppose I'm like, suppose I'm like monitoring my driveway, right, for real, and I want to see what cars coming down my driveway. So I want to do a bit of ANPR, number plate recognition. So it's on my broad. It's all legal, John. We're not doing anything illegal here, right?
Yeah.
But
okay.
Suppose I want to do that, yeah, or I want to play with like face tracking and put like a stupid hat on my face in Ruby, just like I do on Facebook. Where's the tool to do that?
I know there's a Learn library. I don't know how much is out there in the AI space, but yeah, I mean, you're correct. I know that we have less stuff than, you can find over in Python, for example, but you can also shell out to these tools that exist. So
yep,
you could write the gem yourself, Luke, and then all the people that want to spy on their neighbors can use it. So
I feel sometimes in the Ruby community, I feel like all of the devs who use Python are like still plugged into the matrix, and like when a new Ruby library comes out that does like implement OpenCV, that can do, I don't know, some obscure numerical method that's only available in Python, then we kind of go in in the matrix and unplug people from the Python ecosystem, and then they kind of come into the Ruby world. That's how I imagine it in my head.
I mean, yeah. Look, if we can write these libraries, I bet that we could steal all the Python folks. I agree. I mean, yeah. We're pretty welcoming over here. We'll take secondhand developers. That's fine. I mean, most of us. I mean, I am not, but I'm a special case where I like literally landed. My first job was a Ruby job right out of college, but that's not the norm in the Ruby community. Most people in the Ruby community are secondhand, right? Like they came from somewhere else before.
One of my favorite bits in Jeremy Evans' book was the bit whenever any other language comes up, he refers to them as former Java developers, former Python developers, former JavaScript developers. Fantastic device.
Yes, there's a bit of a religious aspect, right, to the Ruby community. If I'm being honest, right, there's sort of like this idea that like once you're over here, you belong to the Ruby community itself. Like there's a possessive aspect to it. There's a offense taken that you might like something else. Yeah, there's some elements of religiosity that definitely crop up. There's this idea that, there's even an idea of heresy, right? Like there's like, oh, that's not the Ruby way of doing things, right? Like it's analogous to heresy right there. So yeah, there's a religiousness to it. Sometimes I think it's unhealthy. Like I definitely am. I think that zealotry causes lots of problems. And so I think if you have like this, this mindset of like what is the correct way, and you're willing to like hit people with a hammer to make them do the right thing that you think is the right thing to do, that's very dangerous in my opinion. But that's willing to tolerate a little religiousness. I happen to like the Ruby community as a whole, so
well, I'm gonna keep trying to convert more people, pull more people out of a matrix. Yeah. But yeah, in terms of other tools, that's what I'm crying out for at the moment. It's just really basic stuff. I want to be able to do this stuff within
really basic stuff. I love that.
And well, yeah, just reading a number plate, putting a fake set of ears on people's head. It's 2022.
I think,
John, this is what all the kind of cool kids want: is ears on the head and OpenCV people.
I do think that Mac is still. I really hate the price that I'm paying for the hardware that I'm getting right now. Again, I take it back. I'm sorry. M1, yeah. Prior to M1, I was mad at Mac or at Apple.
Right.
I think Apple is doing okay with the M1 architecture or whatever. We'll see where that goes. So that's still like kind of like the winner as far as like the tool that I like to use to code on. I'm still very happy with Sublime Text, and actually, I think Sublime Merge is my favorite like visual Git thing out there right now. And since I was already on Sublime Text, it was really easy for me to just use both. They have integrations with each other and things, which is very nice. I still like text editors. I like my text editor to be pretty, which is why I'm not using Vim. I like Stimulus, right? Like, I think that Stimulus is phenomenal for front-end development. And actually, I did something recently with Turbo and Stimulus, and I'm doing a lot more Turbo and Stimulus together. I think they work really together, which is basically most of Hotwire minus the sockets portion. So yeah, it's basically Hotwire. Hotwire is awesome. Yeah, those are the big things. I mean, I think that Rails is a very good generic tool right now. Like it's not, I don't think it's like hot. I am not sure that it's really a sharp knife. It's just really good for the kind of work that I do, which happens to be lots of needing authoritative backends, server and client relationship stuff. That's most of the stuff that I work on. And because of that, Rails is really good at that.
Was fast too.
What's up?
It's fast too.
Yeah, I mean, it's basically the same speed as anything else that's operating in that same space, or roughly the same. Yeah, I mean, you can nitpick things apart, but like, are you really going to give up on your developer happiness and, you know, the ecosystem and it just like how fast it is to develop on versus like, you know, I mean, like performance speed or whatever for the tiny bit of like performance speed that you're getting for using, you know, JavaScript or, you know, Django or PHP or something. Like you're basically getting almost a very imperceptible performance increase for, I think, a very high cost. So that's where I'm at on that. I mean, geez, Postgres is literally out of the big four databases. It's just far and away better. That's currently like my tool over there. I don't even consider anything else. And like, why would you use, unless you have a special use case, why would you ever use a NoSQL database right now? You literally have a NoSQL database baked into Postgres alongside your relational data, and it's faster. like why would you do anything else?
JSON B types. Yeah.
What's up?
Are you a JSON B fan?
HStore was faster than Mongo was. Like, and then JSON came out, and then JSON B came. Like, geez, come on. like, unless you need something like Riak or like Cassandra.
It's taking me back there.
Yeah. Unless you need something like one of these like stores where like they actually are giving you something like really special, right? Like, I don't think that a general NoSQL database makes sense anymore when you can literally just, you know, be like, all right, I have users and I'm going to put all the weird stuff, you know, in a JSON column on my users table, right? It's just not, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me to go all documents all the time when eventually the justification for using NoSQL databases, right, is, well, I don't really know what my data is going to look like. That's great. That's what JSON is for on, you know, but you probably know something about your data. You probably have unique identifiers. You probably know that they are a user, and everything that you know that you stuff in a NoSQL database is stuff that you can't query very quickly. So, I mean, why wouldn't you want to have your cake and eat it too? That's the awesome thing about Postgres, in my opinion, right now. So I think that Postgres is a very sharp knife. I think it's amazing and awesome, and I think it's a general tool too.
The tool I have in Postgres is to use event listeners and store procedures and tables. That is my. There we go. You've given me one of the new tools I'm using this year. Is using a. Let me see if I can get it up. Are you familiar with this? You have like listen channels?
I don't use them because I try to avoid that kind of stuff. But I sort of have this like...
See why...
I sort of have this blocker, like mental blocker, against using low-level database stuff because it has to be maintained by somebody that has very specific database knowledge. And I don't want to be that person, and I don't want to hire that person. So, and because there are alternatives to all of those things that I can do from a higher level, I'd rather use those things. And I'm also not in a scenario where the high performance that, you know, is necessary. So.
Yeah, triggers. I think it's called a trigger. Yeah. So the reason this is like my new amazing tool, which I've convinced no one is fantastic, but believe me, it's coming to my products, and I've done it. I've got one that's using for real. The reason I love this is because it completely eliminates Redis. So I can now run everything I was using for Redis as in kind of events churn the back end to a lot of Hotwire, you know, update, notify, real time things coming at you on the screen. I can now run through this idea of a channel notification in Postgres.
So I'm guessing that you do not use Sidekick, and I'm also guessing that you do not use caching with Redis, both which, you know, I mean, I get it. It eliminates Redis for what you're using, but yeah, I mean, people who are using Redis for other reasons will still want it, but
they'll have to. But my dream is of a kind of completely Redis-free stack. I really hate Redis. I can't tell you how much I dislike.
So there is a thing that Postgres doesn't handle very well, that things like Redis and some other things do handle, and that is basically handle like data aggregation, querying stuff, right? Because like any whatever the classification of database is, it's like, I don't remember if it's ODBC or whatever. Anyway, when you're storing things as tables and records, right, that particular way of storing things is not very good for data aggregation querying, right? And so like there are other tools for helping you to handle that, whether that's Elasticsearch, whether that's these data warehouse solutions. There's a lot of different ways of handling that particular space, and Redis in the past has been used as a tool to help people handle this stuff. So there are reasons to not use Postgres. It doesn't matter how many triggers and views and things you use. Eventually, if you are running into this kind of thing, you'll eventually need a different solution, and that's okay, because that's a different problem space. But I do think that NoSQL, outside of like special use cases, like I said, like if you're using like Cassandra, like it's because you have massive amounts of writing, in multiple places in the world, and you want, eventual consistency or whatever. Like if that's your particular use case, very cool. Go use Cassandra. That's cool. Also, I would probably have a job that moves all your data out of Cassandra over time. But, it syncs it with a database, right? That makes querying easier or something like that. Yep. Like, I mean, obviously, you can end up in a situation where you have so much data coming in that that's not possible. But, I mean, like I'm saying, like there are edge cases where these things are better, but I don't think as a general, there's a reason why the relational database is stuck around for so long. Okay. Yeah, I mean, on the top of my mind, those are the awesome tools.
Tool for
Docker.
I got one last tool for you that I've been using non-stop for the last few months, and that is dbeaver. Are you familiar with dbeaver?
I know exactly what dbeaver is.
Oh my word. dbeaver has saved me.
I have some.
It has saved me. It's saved entire business.
Is that because you have to...
livelihoods have been saved by dbeaver.
Is that because you have to access multiple databases, multiple database kinds?
It's just such an amazing tool for reverse engineering a code base. So if you're not sure how something works, you just drop into dbeaver and say, right, we'll just black box that whole thing and see what actually changed. It's the most amazingly powerful.
How are you using dbeaver? Yeah, so my understanding, because I've used dbeaver in the past, is I just used it as a query tool, right? A SQL query tool.
No, I'm using it to explore. So I'm using it to kind of dive into,
just see what's on the tables.
It's doing. I'm using it as a kind of to literally swim through like a majestic beaver, swimming through a crystal clear Canadian.
All right.
So my dbeaver is swimming through the pool of data to find the horrible blockage in these apps.
Got it. All right. So you mean yes? Okay. So you're just checking out the tables, seeing what's on the tables, things like that.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly. I'm using it as like a browser.
Got it. All right. Yes. I mean, I don't know. Yeah, back when, if you remember when like the MySQL, was it MySQL admin or whatever, like it just like disappeared for a while. That's when I got into using dbeaver, and then I during that time I switched over to to Postgres, and PGP admin and some of the other tools just kind of were terrible, and so I just kept using it for a while, and then PG admin got better and I stopped using it.
Yeah, they got like some kind of big release for like MariaDB 8.
Yep.
MariaDB 8 is I had to install it for my brother who was doing this kind of Laravel.
Yeah, one of my buddies who I worked with on that project that I switched to Postgres on, he still uses dbeaver because I got him into it, and he swears by it still. But yes, a good SQL query browser is definitely a thing that I think people need. Yeah. Okay. So I have one last tool, and that would be Docker. I definitely swear by Docker. I think it really is awesome. I think it's hard to, like I said earlier, I definitely talked about, I think the cons of getting into it, but I do think it's paradigm changing, and I do think that it'll come back once a little bit more tooling has been written about it. I definitely thought the hype was premature, but of course I was very excited that other people liked it. But yeah, I think in the end, yeah, I'm still excited about it. I think it does change the world. I also like Docker, and I like using it, and I'm perfectly happy to get waist deep in all the tools and things like that. So of course I'm fine with it. And the effort now has to be put towards creating the tooling so that the people that are not super into Docker can still use it invisibly, basically. I think that's coming very soon.
So my question is, Docker -compose or Docker space compose, which is
It's obviously Docker -compose, but that's okay.
you familiar with Docker space compose?
So yes, so I will probably
That is very confusing for new Docker users. That is very.
I'm probably going to hang out on Docker -compose for a while because that's the new one is still not feature parity complete or whatever, right?
Mm.
And I am not sure that I'm using any features that I need to, but I'm still probably hanging out here until I feel like completely comfortable with it. At the same time, I've got to move like I got to move ShipLane onto that and things like that. I've got to move things to that new thing and start pushing those new patterns for other people, but I'm probably going to be like sticking behind a little bit here.
The last time I looked, which was in November, it wasn't ready for the prime time because it could only do using remote stuff. It wasn't set up for local Docker development, which is what I do 99.9% of the time.
Yep. This is like one of the, I could talk about like Docker and like my own opinions on like their failures and their successes, right? Like, because I have lots of opinions on that, but I think that the whole Docker space compose thing is on my list of failures for them because it could move over to the success category, but right now I think that it's only causing confusion and it isn't bringing value to the table. I feel like for and this is a developer perspective. Like maybe it's bringing value to the sysadmin, but me as a developer side of DevOps, I don't think it's bringing value to the table because that's not, in my perspective, how developers are really using it. That might be how sysadmins are using it, but I feel like DevOps is a marriage, so I have opinions that reflect that. Cool.
Hi, this is Charles Max Wood from Top End Devs, and lately I've been coaching some people on starting some podcasts and in some cases just taking their career to the next level. Whether you're beginner going to intermediate going to advanced, whether you're trying to get noticed in the community or go freelance, I've been helping these folks figure out how to get in front of people, how to build relationships, and how to build their careers and max out and just go to the next level. So if you're interested in talking to me and having me help you go to the next level, go to topenddevs.com/coaching. I will give you a 1-hour free session where we can figure out what you're trying to do, where you're trying to go, and figure out what the next steps are. And then from there, we can figure out how to get you to the place you want to go. So once again, that's topenddevs.com/coaching.
Should we do some picks that are not related to
we should do some picks
that are not related to code, since we've talked about a lot of things code related?
No, all my picks are related to code. So
all right. It's
going to be non-stop code picks.
All right, let's do some picks.
So the first pick, which is something I alluded to, was the Hire.com 2022 State of Software Engineers. And Ruby on Rails number 2, second only to go. But I think we all know, John, who the real winners are. And I think that's been a reflection both in our experiences. There's been an amazing scramble for Ruby on Rails developers this year. In the first few months of 2022, the most amazing churn I've seen in developer roles, which is not good for software companies, but is absolutely fantastic for developers. So it depends which side you sit on that. My second pick is something which is driving me bonkers. So I'm just taking stuff out of a Postgres database and streaming it as a stream download because it's like a massive download in CSV, yeah. And it maxes out my CPU. Just putting this stuff through Ruby is eating all the CPU on the server just to download a text file, John. It's insane. And I've just found this feature in Postgres where it will put the data in CSV file format for you in C++ and massively reduce your overheads. You're nodding because you already know about it, but I didn't know about it, and maybe listeners don't know about it. So I'm picking it. It's PG SCSV Gem.
No,
the Gem explains how to do it.
I am glad that you found it too. There's some quirky stuff out there that obscure things. I should say there are obscure things out there that like you stumble upon, and maybe like you use them on a project like 8 years ago. And then somebody discovers it today and you're like, I know about that thing. And it's just cool.
It's helped me out. Let's go in tonight. And my last thing, we use a thing from Victron, which is a solar energy monitoring thing. It does all kinds of things. But of course, as soon as we got it, I was right-clicking, viewing the source, John, having a look how they'd done their front end for their solar panels and their nice graphs. And they'd used a library called HighCharts.js, which I hadn't come across. It's the usual SVG in the browser solution for a graph or a chart, but it just looks really nice. So I'm picking out on the stylistic terms. I just really like the way it looks on the page.
Got it. You also have to pay for it too.
What are your picks?
You also have to pay for that one. Pretty sure, right? HighCharts is the pay for one, not the free one. There's like a free alternative, whatever. But you're right, it does look pretty.
Sure.
Okay, so I have 2 picks. I do have 1 programming pick. Excuse me. Sorry. So my programming pick is, all right, so I had to add 2-factor auth to an application. And you have to do like this wizard thing, right? Because you have to say, are you sure you want to do 2-factor auth or whatever, continue more or less, right? Then you say, okay, well, here's your little QR code that you can scan now into your 2-factor auth app. And, they scan it, and then you have to go to the next page and you say, enter in a valid code. They enter in a code, and then you have to come back and say, sweet, that worked, or it didn't work, right? And now you've enabled. So you've kind of got like a little wizard going on. And I did it. I used Stimulus to basically, I created just the simple like modal controller, and its only job was to do a fetch call, right? And populate whatever was inside my modal, right? So I did the whole wizard inside the modal.
Sure.
I used the Wicked gem or whatever that handles wizards on the back end. All of that was super smooth, except for I just had some like weird quirky stuff when I got to like submitting the token to confirm it or whatever, right? Because that's a put, not a get. And instead of spending a whole bunch more time like writing more code in my Stimulus controller to handle the put side, I was like, I'm going to try this turbo thing because I was like reading something about it earlier that day. Just like, let's just see what happens. And holy cow, I just put like a turbo tag in there. I, just used the regular like Rails submit thing, and it just like replaced the stuff inside the turbo tag. And then I just added a thing for like Stimulus to like, basically like trigger Stimulus to like move on to the next, or to like load something afterwards or whatever. Boom, I was done. And I was like, holy cow, this stuff works. And I mean, not that I didn't think that it worked, but it just blew my mind. I was just very excited about it. So I'm definitely recommending Turbo. It really does do what it says, and it works really well with Stimulus. And I considered going back and rewriting the whole thing using Turbo and like popping the Stimulus out altogether, but I just let that go or whatever. Maybe another time. But it really was very easy to use.
How did you do the state transitions between each part of the wizard?
So basically,
a page transition.
Yep.
Not a...
So the page isn't. So I have a modal, right? The only thing that's changing is the modal. The state is changing on the back end. So basically, the user.
Right.
So each of these pages, I'm not really changing state. If you've used the Wicked gem before, which maybe you haven't.
Oh, I see. So you're just stacking it, and then when you submit the format, it puts it all in at once.
Yeah. So when you submit the form, then I mark your user as, okay, now you're using 2-factor auth, and this is your token or whatever, and all that kind of stuff. So I mean, I'm sorry, I add the token to the sort of seed token to the user, or whatever, the thing that determines what they're what you're using. I add the seed token to the user on the first step. That happens there. Then I like flag your user as using 2-factor auth once you've entered a successful token or whatever. So every time you open the wizard, it's going to generate a new seed token and populate it or whatever, because you're starting at step 1. So if you cancel out in the process, or whatever, you'll get a new one. Yeah. I mean, that's basically how it works. The only thing that Stimulus is doing on the front end is doing a fetch, and then it's basically taking the small snippet of HTML that it gets back and plopping it on this modal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Anyway, it's super cool.
That's pretty convincing.
It was very easy to use. I was very happy with how it turned out, and I felt like I literally was like, shoot, I got to write this wizard. Wasn't really planning on doing it. The 2-factor auth thing was kind of like a late request, and I literally got the whole entire thing done in like 5 hours. And I didn't have any Bootstrap on this project or anything. Like, there's no Bootstrap, no Tailwind, no framework, CSS framework. So I like wrote my modal from scratch.
Wow.
So like 2 hours of it were me doing CSS because I'm slow at CSS. And so yeah, the functional part of it was only a couple hours. It was very fast. I was pretty proud of that. Yeah. So that's my code thing for today. And then my last thing is actually, so I've been kind of into, like, we're all at home and all that kind of stuff. I'm definitely into comfortable clothing, right? Very much into comfortable clothing. I like comfortable clothing, just the way it is. And so my wife actually purchased me like this super hella soft robe for my birthday. It's super awesome. Also, it costs a crap ton of money. So whatever. I'm still recommending it because it's amazing. But it's like from Everjay, and it's super soft and awesome. So for me, I like soft stuff. I like comfortable clothing. That's why I wear like track pants and like t-shirts like all the time stuff. So yeah. Anyway, so that's my second pick. Cool. All right.
Very cool.
Well, it was great discussing this with you today, Luke. I hope all of y'all have some cool new tools that you heard us talk about, or you're thinking about how other people use tools. Maybe some of you will upgrade your version of Mac OS before me next time it comes out, and help me get through all the headache and solve my problems. I feel kind of bad sometimes, but I'm like, somebody cares about it more than me, so it's okay. Awesome. We'll see you guys next time. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bandwidth for this segment is provided by CacheFly, the world's fastest CDN. Deliver your content fast with CacheFly. Visit CACHEFLY.com to learn more.